Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from USA Today for a cold Friday, January 30th, 2026. Your reader for this hour is me, Chet Walsick. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad I'm here. And we'll kick it off with the weekend edition of USA Today and an interesting cover story on their opening section. It's a little bit lengthy, but informative. Lawsuits allege risks in weight loss drugs. Maryland truck driver suffered an eye stroke that left him blind, first in one eye and then the other. An Oklahoma real estate agent heard her colon pop as it ruptured while she drove her granddaughter home from a softball game. "My colon blew up, literally blew up," she said. She had just wanted to finally lose that extra 40 pounds. Each has filed lawsuits that blame the popular class of weight loss drugs known as GLP-1 receptor agonists, which include Ozempic, Wegovy, and Mounjaro, and they are part of a growing number of lawsuits alleging that drug makers failed to sufficiently warn of the risk of certain severe injuries. The suits come as the use of blockbuster drugs has skyrocketed, embraced by millions of Americans to manage diabetes, lower the risk of heart disease, and lose weight. The drugs, which mimic a hormone that slows digestion, trigger insulin, and help people feel full longer, cut America's stubbornly high obesity rates for the first time in more than a decade, and show promise in aiding a range of conditions from kidney disease to drug addiction. Plaintiffs represent only a fraction of the 12% of American adults, or more than 31 million people, the nonpartisan health policy organization KFF estimates are using GLP-1 drugs. The plaintiffs say the drug warnings at the time did not prepare them for what they encountered. Since the first such case was filed in 2023, at least 4,400 patients have filed lawsuits that are now part of consolidated federal and state litigation. Numbers that are expected to grow as part of legal challenges expected to take several years. The suits target Novo Nordisk, the Danish manufacturer of Ozempic, Wegovy, Rybelsus, Victoza, and Saxenda, and Indiana-based Eli Lilly, which makes Trulicity, Mounjaro, and Zepbound. The drug makers have broadly refuted the allegations and said they will vigorously defend the drug's safety. And what do the lawsuits allege? In court on January 13th, Novo Nordisk's attorney Katie Ansonia reported 75% of the federal lawsuits include an allegation of gastroparesis, or stomach paralysis, a chronic condition in which the stomach slows or stops emptying food into the small intestine. 18% of the cases allege the drugs caused ileus, a condition in which bowel muscles fail to push food and waste out of the body. 18% of the plaintiffs allege intestinal obstructions. 8% say they suffered from gallbladder injuries, with some of these patients requiring surgical removal of gangrenous tissue. 8% of the plaintiffs allege other serious gastrointestinal complications such as extreme vomiting, chronic acid reflux, or abdominal pain that required multiple hospitalizations in some cases. Others say their digestive issues have continued even after they stopped taking the drugs. These figures add up to more than 100%, since many plaintiffs are alleging multiple side effects from taking GLP-1 drugs. USA Today found similar numbers when it examined a random sample of 100 of the federal lawsuits. In addition, USA Today's review revealed that at least 110 plaintiffs across both the federal and state lawsuits alleged the drugs caused sudden blindness or severe vision changes, and at least one plaintiff said she has developed a serious neurological condition called Wernicke's encephalopathy that causes mental confusion, double vision, and poor coordination. In a 2024 joint court filing, The two companies said that the safety profile of GLP-1RAs has been well established in hundreds of clinical trials, large-scale observational studies, and nearly 2 decades of real-world use. The known risks associated with these medicines are reflected in their FDA-approved product labeling, which collectively FDA has reviewed more than 40 times and are discussed in textbooks, treatment guidelines, and journals. Novo Nordisk updates product labels in cooperation with the FDA and consistent with federal regulations to reflect the most current understanding of the safety and efficacy profile of our medicines, said Flavia Brackling, a spokesperson for the company. Novo Nordisk remains confident in the benefit-risk profile of our GLP-1 medicines when used consistent with their indications and product labeling. Michael Jameson, a spokesperson for Eli Lilly, sent a statement stating, "Patient safety is Lilly's top priority, and we actively monitor, evaluate, and report safety information for all of our medicines. Mounjaro, Zepbound, and Trulicity's labels include robust FDA-approved warnings and have always warned of potential gastrointestinal adverse reactions, sometimes severe." He added, "As part of our routine safety reviews process for Mounjaro, Zepbound, and Trulicity, we work closely with regulators regarding potential safety topics, and we will continue to review data to ensure that appropriate safety information is available to prescribers." Anna Santos Rushman, a health law professor at Villanova University, said proving the drugs caused certain outcomes will be an issue as the legal battle unfolds, along with the extent and timing of warnings, and she will be watching to see how the legal fight influences public trust and the market for such drugs, while raising larger questions about what level of drug risk warnings are deemed sufficient. Jonathan Orant, a lead plaintiff attorney, said despite some warning updates, "We think that the full panoply of conditions that this set of drugs can cause are not fully warned of." Some of the plaintiffs who spoke to USA Today said they hope to see stronger or more specific warnings about the potential for severe outcomes. "The whole thing has been catastrophic to me and my wife," said Todd Engel, the Maryland truck driver who alleges in his lawsuit that Ozempic led to his vision loss. Engel has been taking Ozempic to manage his diabetes for about 4 months when he woke up in December 2023 with a loss of vision in one eye, he told USA Today. The 63-year-old, who drove snowplows and hauled heavy equipment for Howard County, Maryland, was diagnosed with non-arteritic anterior ischemic optic neuropathy, called NAION, thought to result from reduced blood flow to the optic nerve. It is sometimes referred to as an eye stroke. While diabetes is one risk factor for the condition, he said his health providers ran tests for various potential causes but found no firm answers. His medication did not come up as something that could potentially be related to it, he said, so he kept taking his injections. In October 2024, he said he woke up and turned to his wife, Shelley, to tell her his other eye had gone dark. "You are not going to believe this," she recalled him saying. "I cannot see at all." Now legally blind, Engels had to quit his job and give up his commercial driver's license. He can't see his grandkids play baseball, he said, and the couple has shelved much of their retirement travel bucket list. He later learned that some research has suggested a potential link between semaglutide and the eye condition. In a study of almost 17,000 people published in JAMA Ophthalmology in 2024, researchers found an increased risk of NAION among individuals prescribed semaglutide relative to those prescribed other medications to treat type 2 diabetes and obesity. But it noted it did not establish a causal relationship. In June, a European Medical Safety Committee noted that Wegovy and Ozempic have been linked in very rare cases to the eye condition, Reuters reported, which led Novo Nordisk to update its European labels for Wegovy and Ozempic to state that semaglutide, their active ingredient, may cause NAION in up to 1 in 10,000 patients. U.S. labels warn of vision changes without mentioning NAION. The American Academy of Ophthalmology has said it does not support a blanket recommendation for all patients to immediately stop taking semaglutide if they develop NAION because of risks for those with difficult-to-manage diabetes or underlying vascular health conditions. Instead, they recommend that patients carefully consult healthcare providers before making a decision. And it noted that a review of the available data has not established that semaglutide causes NAION, only a potential link between the two. Novo Nordisk did not comment directly on Engel's individual lawsuit when asked. In court documents, the drug companies note that diabetic patients are already at a higher risk of conditions like blindness, gastroparesis, and intestinal dysfunction. Novo Nordisk said in a statement that updates to labeling are made in conjunction with the Food and Drug Administration and federal regulations. For example, Ozempic's FDA label was expanded in September 2023, shortly after the first lawsuits were filed, to include ileus as a possible gastrointestinal disorder. By late 2025, it had been updated again to include effects such as intestinal obstruction and severe constipation, including fecal impaction, among several other additions. Also last year, Trulicity's label added acute pancreatitis, hemorrhagic and necrotizing pancreatitis, sometimes resulting in death, to its disclosures. But Engel said that had he or his physicians been aware of the possible link to the eye condition that could cause permanent blindness, something that seemed far from a simple side effect, he would have reconsidered taking it, and certainly would have stopped taking it after his first eye stroke. What happened to me should have never happened, he said. At home, Engel's wife, Shelley, said she has had to place raised plastic dots on the microwave start button. He uses smart glasses with a microphone and a camera to ask what room he's in as he learns to live without sight. I wake up in the dark, and I go to sleep in the dark, he said. Jo Helen McLean, a 72-year-old real estate agent from suburban Oklahoma City, had a simple goal when she started taking Wegovy in November 2023. I was trying to slim down and feel healthy, she told USA Today. The grandmother saw her weight fall from 205 pounds to 165, with little of the nausea she had heard so much about. Wegovy even seemed to ease inflammation and pain from her rheumatoid arthritis. In March 2024, McLean was driving her 14-year-old granddaughter home from high school softball when they heard a loud noise. It sounded like a balloon popping, she said. What was that? She recalled her granddaughter blurting out. It was the sound of her colon rupturing. McLean said she was lucky to be close to an emergency room where she learned a blockage had caused the rupture. She was stunned that it had not produced any noticeable warning symptoms, such as feeling constipated. Taken into surgery, she said doctors had to remove a large portion of her colon. She spent 5 days in the ICU battling sepsis and then faced months of painful recovery, barely able to eat or get out of bed. Doctors created a stoma, or valve, in her torso, telling her she would have to live permanently with a bag that connects to collect stool. The bag has caused embarrassing leaks, she said, while she has battled depression and anxiety. She blames Wegovy in a federal lawsuit filed in January 2026. The allegations in the lawsuit include a failure to warn of the risks. Asked for comment, Novo Nordisk did not address her individual case, but has generally refuted such allegations. Wegovy warns it may cause serious side effects, including conditions such as thyroid tumors, pancreatitis, gallbladder problems, depression, and severe stomach problems. McLean's suit is among the latest to join about 3,200 federal challenges, which are in addition to more than 1,200 lawsuits against Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly in state courts in New Jersey, Indiana, and Delaware. The plaintiffs in these states' cases range in age from 18 to 87 and are found in at least 44 U.S. states. USA Today reviewed a random sample of 100 of the thousands of federal lawsuits to learn more about the patients suing these companies. The majority are women, about 2/3 of the plaintiffs in the sample. They skew older than the average American, with a median age of 52, but the patients sampled range from 26 to 75 years old. About a quarter of the plaintiffs reported using multiple weight loss drugs. Almost 3/4 use Ozempic, a quarter use Trulicity, and 17% use Mounjaro. Other weight loss drugs were mentioned in just a few cases. The federal multi-district legislation in the U.S. District Court for Eastern Pennsylvania focusing on gastrointestinal injury is currently in the pre-trial phase. The first so-called bellwether test trials are not expected until 2027, plaintiffs' attorney said. Such consolidated cases often last 4 to 5 years, said Elizabeth Chambly Birch, a University of Georgia law professor who is an expert in multi-district legislation. The challenges come as an increasing number of Americans turn to the class of drugs which were first used to help control blood sugar levels for diabetic patients about 2 decades ago. These drugs are not new, said Zayed Al-Ali, who directs research and development at the St. Louis Veterans Affairs healthcare system. What is new about them is that the companies then realized, oh my God, they actually work on weight loss. When Ozempic began being used off-label for weight loss, Novo Nordisk developed Wegovy for weight loss, with Eli Lilly releasing Mounjaro and Trulicity. Demand also fueled a market of compounding pharmacies using similar ingredients. GLP-1 prescriptions shot up from about 1 million at the start of 2018 to about 9 million in 2022. The usage of GLP-1 drugs like Ozempic and Wegovy doubled between 2024 and 25, according to one Gallup study. That growth has been fueled by high-profile celebrities, influencers, and word of mouth, with more states fully covering GLP-1s for obesity treatment under Medicaid. It's expected to rise further with a newly introduced pill version of the class of drug. One study that LLI helped conduct and published in Nature Medicine in early 25 compared the effects of GLP-1 medications to other types of treatment in dozens of health outcomes. In addition to GLP-1's now well-known ability to treat diabetes and obesity, Al-Ali and his team found connections between GLP-1 use and reduced risk of substance abuse disorders, suicidal ideation, seizures, dementia, and Alzheimer's diseases, among many others. Their study confirmed GLP-1s increase the risk of nausea, vomiting, kidney stones, sleep disturbances, and gastrointestinal problems. Al-Ali said he sympathizes with the plaintiffs of these lawsuits, but overall, he believes the drug's benefits outweigh the risks for most patients. He advises his patients to pay close attention to how their bodies react to GLP-1 medications and bring up any concerns so they can revisit the dose or try another medication. That is the reality of life. There is nothing that's really all benefit and no risk. There is no medicine like that, Al-Ali said. But McLean's lawsuit alleges that the manufacturer downplayed the risks. I read everything I could find on it before I went on it, she said, and I knew that there was nausea and some problems with slowing down your digestive system and things like that. But they did not warn about any of the stuff that happened to me at that time. So there you have it. Every drug has its side effect. You are listening to reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, and the time is 20 minutes after the hour. And we continue with the opening section of the USA Today Weekend Edition. And switching gears here, Maduro called impediment to progress. Dateline Washington. Secretary of State Marco Rubio told senators at a January 28th hearing that Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro was an impediment to progress and had refused to make a deal with the Trump administration before it captured him in a surprise military operation on January 3rd. This was one option that was available to the president after exhausting every other option, Rubio told the Senate Foreign Relations Committee less than a month after Maduro's ouster. Rubio said that Maduro had broken so many deals that not even the Vatican wanted to deal with him. What he wanted to do was tap us along and buy 3 years of time until he could deal with a new administration that he thought may be more favorable, he said. Since Maduro was captured, the Trump administration has unveiled a $2 billion deal to sell Venezuela's oil. Since then, Delcy Rodriguez, Maduro's vice president, who took over after his capture, has introduced legal reforms to comply with the administration's plans to sell the country's oil. Rodriguez has made increasingly combative remarks toward the United States in recent days, even as she is moving to cooperate with the Trump administration's plans to sell Venezuela's oil for billions of dollars. Enough already of Washington's orders to politicians in Venezuela, she told oil workers on January 25th. Rubio said Rodriguez and the United States had a respectful and productive line of communication, but the Trump administration would judge actions, not words, he added. The committee's top Democrat questioned why the Trump administration had removed Maduro only to keep his regime in place. Senator Jeanne Shaheen, a Democrat from New Hampshire, said in her opening remarks that Rodriguez's cooperation appears tactical and temporary. We have traded one dictator for another, she said. Rubio told the Senate committee that the United States wanted to set free and fair elections in Venezuela, but that it would take some time. You can have elections all day, but if the opposition has no access to the media, if opposition candidates are routinely dismissed and unable to be on the ballot, those are not free and fair elections, Rubio said. We are not going to get there in 3 weeks. President Trump has praised Rodriguez as terrific, and the Venezuelan interim leader met with CIA Director John Ratcliffe on January 16th. Ratcliffe discussed important items of potential cooperation during the trip, but recent news reports have raised questions about the Trump administration's trust in her. Reuters reported on January 27 that U.S. intelligence had raised doubts about her cooperation. CNN reported the same day that the CIA would maintain a foothold in the country. Senator Chris Murphy, Democrat from Connecticut, asked Rubio why the Trump administration tapped 2 large foreign oil traders to sell Venezuela's oil and whether Trump and his financial and political backers were personally profiting from it. The scope of the project that you are undertaking in Venezuela is without precedent, Murphy said. You are taking their oil at gunpoint. You are holding and selling that oil, putting for now the receipts in an offshore Middle Eastern account. You are deciding how and for what purposes that money is going to be used in a country of 30 million people. Such arrangement is destined for failure, Murphy said, and possibly facilitating corruption both in Venezuela and here at home. USA Today previously reported that money from the oil sales, $500 million generated from them so far, is held in a Qatari bank account. The 2 primary trading companies that the Trump administration picked to execute the sale have both pleaded guilty in recent years in Latin American bribery scandals, and a trader with one company that worked to secure the sale donated millions to Trump's re-election campaign. To many Americans, that reeks of corruption, Murphy said of the company. The long-term plan, he said, for Venezuela to sell oil directly into the market. That is not the permanent outcome here. That is a short-term fix for a short-term problem. Senator Tim Kaine, a Democrat from Virginia, lambasted the Trump administration about dozens of deadly strikes it had launched on suspected drug trafficking boats in the Caribbean Sea and Eastern Pacific that have killed more than 100 people. Those strikes began as the United States closed in on Venezuela in the fall. I can't share with you the grim details of the murder of shipwrecked survivors in open waters that we all know because we've seen the videos and we have questioned U.S. military officials involved about legality because the administration will not release that publicly, Kaine said. Kaine has led an effort to stop the Trump administration's military actions against Venezuela through a war powers resolution. It failed a Senate vote January 14th, despite some Republicans crossing the aisle to vote with Democrats. Kaine said members of Congress would be very surprised if they asked, in a classified setting, for the evidence the administration has that there were narcotics on the targeted boats. Thank God for having a public hearing 5 months in, he said. Outrage from Democrats on the Hill exploded after news reports revealed that the first such attack was a double tap strike that killed 2 survivors after the first 9 people on board were killed. The family of 2 men killed in the boat strikes filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration on January 27th. New estimate puts price tag on Trump's deployments. Sending military to cities cost taxpayers $496 million. President Trump's deployment of the military to American cities cost taxpayers nearly $500 million last year and would cost more than $1.1 billion if continued for another year, according to an estimate from the Congressional Budget Office. The estimate found that Trump's deployments of soldiers to 5 U.S. cities, including Los Angeles and Washington, D.C., cost around $496 million. It was shared in response to a request from Senator Jeff Merkley, Democrat of Oregon, and other lawmakers. The American people deserve to know how many hundreds of millions of their hard-earned dollars have been and are being wasted on Trump's reckless and haphazard deployment of National Guard troops to Portland and cities across the country, Merkley said in a statement. Trump's deployments of troops domestically have been dogged by legal challenges from local and state leaders, and several have been halted by judges who deemed them illegal. Trump first dispatched thousands of National Guard troops and hundreds of active duty Marines to Los Angeles in June as protests exploded against his administration's aggressive immigration raids in the area. The administration later sent hundreds of guardsmen to Chicago and Portland, Oregon last fall in response to protests, but court rulings forced troops in all 3 cities to withdraw. The Supreme Court barred the Trump administration in December from sending troops to Chicago. In August, Trump ordered the National Guard to Washington, D.C. over what he called rampant crime in the city. Since then, troops deployed to the capital city have been assigned to task forces for beautification and safety, which have seen soldiers plucking trash and shoveling mulch in public parks and standing guard in downtown train stations. According to internal military budget information obtained by USA Today in September, the deployment of National Guard troops to Washington cost more than $1.8 million per day. The CBO analysis found that another year of the Washington deployment will cost roughly $55 million per month. Troops were sent to Memphis and New Orleans with the consent of the Republican governors of Tennessee and Louisiana. A judge blocked the Memphis deployment in November, siding with state and local officials who sued. Troops arrived in New Orleans in late December when Republican Governor Jeff Landry requested their help in fighting crime. The deployment to New Orleans does not factor into the CBO's cost estimate for last year. You are listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today. on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, where the time is 30 minutes after the hour. And let's jump over to the opinion section for Friday, January 30th. We have a piece written by Sarah Pequeno. Sarah is on the social media platform Blue Sky, and she is a USA Today columnist. And Miss Pequeno's column is entitled, "Why Nostalgia for 2016 Washed Over the Beginning of 2026." I started seeing ghosts of the prior decade a few days after 2026 began, when acquaintances and friends began posting photos like it was 2016. They showed off their exaggerated eyebrows, brandy Melville tops, white Converse and Snapchat filters with saturated colors that added puppy dog ears to users in the slot. The 2016 trend took off on Instagram shortly after, with celebrities and brands, including USA Today, capitalizing on the nostalgia. When I went through my Photos app recently, I found evidence of the tattoo-less 18-year-old I once was. Blonde highlights, beaded choker with a moon charm hugging the base of my neck, and heavy brown eye makeup that was the hallmark of someone who owned one of Urban Decay's naked palettes. I did not feel sentimental looking at my past self. I felt something closer to shame. Or perhaps it was anxiety about the passage of time and the loss of innocence. I didn't know it at the time, but 2016 was the last year I could be a child, the last year I could pretend that what was going on in the world did not affect my life. We all remember how 2016 ended. Donald Trump subverted polling and expert opinion and won the presidential election, plunging us into a decade of well-documented turmoil. Oh, how naive we were to think that Hillary Clinton would run away with it. How wrong we were about where the country stood after nearly a decade of leadership under former President Obama. But in the months leading up to the shock, things were good. For those of us who were young and carefree, politics was something we did not have to worry about just yet, or were just dipping our toes into. There had been major gains for Democrats under Obama. Gay marriage had been made legal nationwide the year prior. We had no idea that what a pandemic could do to the nation, despite the prevalence of the Zika virus and Ebola in the news. And while retrospective of the era represented a lukewarm take on the country's economy, it was ultimately in a better place than it is today. The culture was exuberant. Frank Ocean and Rihanna both had new music out. It was a Gatsby-esque life before we had to contend with the realities of how Trump got elected and what it truly meant our country was at. I think that's why the trend persisted over a few weeks and why so many people jumped at the opportunity to share their memories of 2016. It feels like the moment before everything changed, a moment where we could pretend things were still okay. Well, in reality, they never were. My personal feelings about 2016 are mixed. Scrolling through my phone, I winced when I saw pictures of people I no longer talk to. The only person I have kept in touch with from that time in my life is my freshman year roommate who's getting married this year. I have erased almost every photo of me wearing my sorority letters, every photo of me at a frat party, football game, or the hot dog joint I worked at for most of my college years. Still, some good came out of that year. I had just started writing for a now defunct college media site covering a mixture of Southern culture and topics that supposedly appealed to women. It was my first taste of what I would later come to think of as my calling. I took my first journalism class, 8 a.m., Tuesdays and Thursdays, for 2.5 hours. The day after Trump was elected, I knew where any inklings of talent I was told I might possess could best be used. So while we all reminisce on the world before Trump, before COVID, and before we had to grow up, I find that I'm still happier being who I am in 2026. And that was only because of the emotional roller coaster that was 2016. You are listening to reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 35 minutes after the hour, and we move to what USA Today calls the money section, but it's essentially become, in my opinion, a travel and tourism section. They rarely give us any money advice. I used to enjoy that. But their opening piece, Cruising Altitude, RIP Open Seating. Southwest Airlines as we knew it is gone. And this is written by Zach Winter, USA Today travel columnist. Friends and loved ones, we are gathered here today to mourn the loss of Southwest Airlines as it once was. The fun, free-spirited carrier with open seating and 2 complimentary checked bags for every passenger is no more. Elliott Management, the airline's new Wall Street overlord, decided the company would be more profitable by fitting in with the others. On January 27th, the last major differentiator between Southwest and its competitors fell by the wayside as the airline moved to assign seats for all passengers. It may not seem like a life-altering decision to some. In fact, many casual travelers may not even notice. Certainly, when I flew an early morning flight on the first day of assigned seating, there was no commotion. There was no pushback. There wasn't even any apparent confusion among passengers heading to assigned seats, even as the airline was transforming from the quirky carrier that so many travelers loved for its personality and different approach. Speaking more broadly and from the heart, it's a bummer. I may like knowing what to expect when I travel, but there's something to be said when a company blazes its own trail and stands out from the competition. It is a very big deal. They are going to be in many ways similar to the other 3 mega carriers who have 80% of the market more or less offering the same product. William McGee, Senior Fellow for Aviation and Travel at the American Economic Liberties Project, told me. Southwest managed to find a niche and managed to develop a product that truly was different than the others. It can be good for travelers to have choice beyond the simple schedule an airline operates. And Southwest's decision with its competitors poses a bigger question. What will this mean for its most loyal passengers? So what changed at Southwest? Well, in the past year or so, Southwest reinvented itself to be more like all the other major U.S. airlines. Where once the Dallas-based carrier offered 2 free checked bags for every passenger, first-come, first-served seating, a flexible policy for plus-size passengers, and other customer-friendly business practices, the airline is now getting in line with the competition. Free checked bags for most casual passengers? That's over, especially when airlines collectively made $7.3 billion from bag fees in 2024, according to the Department of Transportation. The exhilarating race to grab a seat? Yep, that's done too. Assigned seating and extra legroom rows have become the new standard on its fleet of Boeing 737s. A second seat for passengers who need the space? Yeah, sure, but it's more likely to cost you. Its plus-size passenger policy, too, has gotten more restrictive. While executives insisted the changes give customers more choice and more options that they actually want, consumer advocates like McGee aren't so sure. From his perspective, the changes are being driven entirely by what's good for the company's quarterly earnings statements, not necessarily what's best for passengers. More should be made of the fact that we have such an upside-down world here, in that the market is driven by punishing people. So therefore, if you're doing something that is good and that consumers like, for example, free bags, what do investors on Wall Street say, and what do the big banks and the analysts say? They say, you're leaving money on the table, he said. The value of your company is hurt because you're doing something good for your customers. Brian Lorenzo, 28, a Southwest Airlines loyalist, told me he's happy to see them doing more for different customers and added that he's glad to see Southwest doing assigned seating in its own way, which includes keeping the pre-boarding lineup procedure, something he said seems to make boarding go smoother. But still, he said, he'll miss some of the old quirks. So, you might ask, what it's like on the new Southwest? Well, it's just like any other airline, and isn't that kind of a shame? When I flew to Nashville from New York on January 27th, I was expecting at least some people to be upset or annoyed about the new policy. Instead, I saw a bunch of passengers slogging their way through the airport before the sun came up and checking their boarding passes to confirm their seat assignment. Southwest open seating policy, in place for decades, ended more with a resigned sigh than a furious uproar. Even the airline's own press materials were uncharacteristically staid. Today marks the beginning of a new chapter for Southwest Airline as the airline introduces assigned and premium seating in response to customer demand for more options, including extra legroom seating, preferred seating, and standard seating, along with a new group-based boarding process and elevated travel experience, a statement from the company said. Online, some superfans spoke out about how much they would miss open seating, but at LaGuardia Airport on the morning of January 27th, it seemed like most people didn't notice, or at least didn't care if they did take note. On board, people found their seats and seemingly went to sleep, or at least I went to sleep. There wasn't much else to do, considering the Wi-Fi, now free for all Rapid Rewards members, was non-functional. And just like that, a new era at Southwest began, with passengers sleeping in their assigned seats, unable to scroll Instagram. I was in seat 24A, a window seat near the back of the plane, assigned to me at check-in with my basic economy ticket. There was no singing or celebration at my gate, although the airline announced a few celebrations that popped up for other flights, including the last one with open seating. Meanwhile, Southwest executives promised the airline intends to keep its quirky personality on board, even amid the other changes. How, you may ask? That is up in the air. That morning departure on January 27th could have been any other flight on any other airline. For McGee's part, he said, these changes were bound to come to Southwest's lovely skies sooner or later. In the end, we all should be surprised that they hung on as long as they did, he said. I guess, the market being what it is, it was inevitable. Oh well. We continue with the travel and tourism section. A piece written by USA Travel columnist Kathleen Wong. Traveling alone in 2026? Start with these top destinations. Solo travel can seem intimidating at first, but many find it uniquely gratifying. In a 2024 Skyscanner survey, 43% of the 2,000 American respondents said they took a solo trip that year with plans to do it again. Their top reasons for traveling by themselves were for self-care, personal growth, and having the freedom to follow their own schedule. As many solo travelers know firsthand, where you go can make all the difference in your trip. Heading to a far-off destination that's tricky to navigate can be stressful for first-time solo travelers. TripAdvisor recently dropped its Traveler's Choice Awards Best of the Best 2026, including a list of the top solo travel destinations based on millions of reviews and ratings from real-life travelers made between October 2024 and September 2025. Solo travel can be incredibly rewarding, but it asks more of the traveler, TripAdvisor's Chief Communications Officer Laurel Greatrix said in a statement. Our 2026 solo travel destinations reflect where solo travelers consistently say they had great trips, places that tend to feel welcoming, manageable, and genuinely enjoyable when you're traveling alone. Here are the best destinations for solo travelers according to TripAdvisor. Cape Town Central, South Africa. With its somber history, multicultural background, and natural landscapes, Cape Town offers travelers a fulfilling trip. People can visit historical sites such as Robben Island, dedicated to Nelson Mandela, or explore the outdoors. About an hour's drive from the city is the Cape of Good Hope Nature Reserve, featuring 30 square miles of hiking trails, beaches, and wildlife. Bali, Indonesia. Bali isn't just for surfers or yogis, but anyone looking for a tropical estate. Although this Indonesian island is not exactly off the beaten path, it is still beloved by many travelers. This year, it earned the title as TripAdvisor's top destination in the world, not only for its stunning beaches and tropical jungles, but array of activities such as manta ray snorkeling, batik fabric workshops, and more. And next we have Madrid, Spain. Solo travelers can easily lose track of time, meandering the Spanish capital of Madrid, taking in the gorgeous architecture and history at one of the many museums. The city feels lively with clubs, boutiques, and a plethora of restaurants. After a day out and about, travelers can indulge in tapas, tasting local flavors such as paella and wine. And then we have Hanoi, Vietnam. I guess some of our vets might not feel the same way. Anyway, Vietnam's capital of Hanoi keeps travelers busy with its history and eclectic energy. The city is home to over 600 temples, as well as significant sites such as Ho Chi Minh's mausoleum and the colonial-style Old Quarter. The food is worth a visit all on its own. The banh mi and delicious crepes influenced by French and Chinese cultures, and even Michelin-rated restaurants. And then we have New York City. The city that never sleeps is a good choice for solo travelers in 2026. New York's diverse background means travelers can taste cultures from around the world, from Chinatown to Queens. The city has no shortage of iconic things to do, from the Statue of Liberty to the Metropolitan Museum of Art and Central Park. And then we have Edinburgh, Scotland. If grand castles and even grander natural beauty are up your alley, then Edinburgh is your perfect next solo destination. Travelers can check out the iconic Edinburgh Castle, one of the oldest fortified sites in Europe, perched upon a hill, before enjoying the UNESCO World Heritage Sites in Old Town and the sweeping vistas of Arthur's Seat. To relax, people can hit one of the city's many pubs or sip on afternoon tea. And then we have Santiago, Chile. Santiago is an up-and-coming destination set against the backdrop of the Andes. From being home to the tallest building in South America, the Gran Torre Santiago, to the many cafes and dance clubs, solo travelers will always find something to do in Chile's capital. For some peace and quiet, you can also venture just outside the city borders to one of the many vineyards. And now we move on to London. London is a sprawling city offering something for every type of traveler. Visit world-class museums, eat Sunday dinner at a pub, or enjoy a play at the Globe. For solo travelers, exploring England's capital is relatively accessible, especially with the Tube. Sign up for a walking or food tour to take in the sights and knowledge from a local. And how about Berlin? Exploring Berlin can feel like being in both the past and the future. The city is home to Museum Island, a UNESCO World Heritage Site featuring 5 world-class museums, and to historical sites like the Berlin Wall and the Holocaust Museum, which are somber yet must-visit places. However, the city is also energetic with its cutting-edge fashion, techno clubs, and modern art galleries. And lastly, we have Dublin. Travelers cannot go wrong with a visit to Dublin, the historic capital of Ireland and the best destination for solo trips. Even if you're not a literature buff, you will still feel captivated by this charming city that feels like traveling back in time. Solo travelers will find Dublin to be walkable, so it's easy to explore on your own. Visit the Dublin Castle. Look at the 9th century manuscript of the Book of Kells at Trinity College before noshing down some fish and chips for dinner. You are listening to reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 50 minutes after the hour, and we continue with the travel and tourism section. Bay Area offers much more than Super Bowl. If you hate football, you'll have a big range of options. This is by Nathan Diller, USA Today travel columnist. The Super Bowl will draw football fans from far and wide to Northern California in early February, but sports agnostic travelers shouldn't despair. Whether you just happen to be visiting during the February 8th game at Santa Clara's Levi Stadium, or you're accompanying a pigskin devotee on their trip, there is still plenty else to do in the Bay Area. I do think you could have a perfectly nice time if you're smart about it, Doug Johnson, spokesperson for AAA Northern California, told USA Today. Here's the non-football fans' travel guide for Super Bowl weekend, from what to do or how to avoid the crowds. Even with the influx of football fans, Johnson said travelers can still enjoy some tried and true tourist destinations such as San Francisco's Golden Gate Park. You know, you could do a Segway tour through the park, but there's also the California Academy of Sciences, he said. Guests can enjoy an aquarium, planetarium, and more. The De Young and Legion of Honor Fine Art Museums and Japanese Tea Garden are also close by. Chinatown is a good place to walk around as well, according to Johnson. If the mainland gets too crowded, hop on a ferry and head to Alcatraz Island, where visitors can tour the former federal penitentiary, military prison, and fort, although he advised booking tickets ahead of time. And then, if you're looking to get out of the city itself, there's Angel Island State Park, which is a great place. Oh yeah, I've been there. That place is cool. The San Francisco Bay's biggest natural island offers striking views, hiking, and is just a 30-minute ferry ride away. He also recommends wine tasting in Napa and Sonoma, about an hour from San Francisco by car, though that can vary depending on traffic. Other options include exploring Mount Diablo State Park, visiting Half Moon Bay State Park, though the weather will likely still be a bit chilly. Johnson also warned travelers to keep an eye out for other official Super Bowl activities that could make getting around trickier. Those include events at the Moscone Center, the Palace of Fine Arts, SFMOMA, and the Hibernia. A list is available on the NFL website. When Super Bowl week is actually a good time to visit. Super Bowl weekend may also be an especially good time to visit certain attractions like Muir Woods National Monument in Mill Valley. It's usually very crowded, and you have to get a reservation to get parking there, Johnson said. I would guess that you could probably get into Muir Woods a little bit easier on Super Bowl Sunday, just because there's going to be more people staying at home watching the game. The same goes for Point Reyes National Seashore, which can get quite busy under normal circumstances. If you don't mind a farther drive, Fort Bragg on the Mendocino coast is a cute little town kind of removed from the crowds, about 3.5 hours from San Francisco. If winter sports are more your thing, consider visiting a Lake Tahoe ski resort. My parents will go every Super Bowl Sunday because there's no lift lines to any of the ski resorts, Johnson said. Just because it's Super Bowl weekend doesn't mean you have to plan your trip around football. There's also plenty of other ways for travelers to enjoy a few days in or around the Bay Area, game or no game. And having lived in San Francisco, I'll offer a couple of my favorite places. It's a short trip down to Half Moon Bay, a cool little community, kind of artsy, but nonetheless worth the trip, and you'll see some beautiful sights. And you can take the ferry or the BART across the bay to Oakland or Berkeley, and check out some of the cool sites there. All in all, there's plenty of things to do there, and it is a fascinating city. You are listening to reading articles and features from USA Today for Friday, January 30th, 2026, on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We will return for more readings after this short break. Your reader for this hour has been me, Chet Walczyk. Thanks for joining me. I hope you have a good weekend. Stay warm. Man, it's cold out, but we'll look for that groundhog next week to give us some good news. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
now with our reading of articles from today's issue of the USA Today. Your reader for this hour is Nancy. It's the Life section, which is Section B, on Friday, the 30th of January. Movies. Disgraced director Ratner is back with Melania. From Brian Truitt, Patrick Ryan, and Francesca Chambers. The First Lady is the star of the Melania Trump documentary, but all eyes in Hollywood are on who's seated in the director's chair. Brett Ratner, once one of the film industry's hottest names, hasn't made a movie since 2014's Hercules, after 6 women, including actresses Olivia Munn and Natasha Henstridge, accused Ratner of sexual harassment in a Los Angeles Times report. He's now doing a very different kind of movie from the hit Rush Hour franchise or X-Men, The Last Stand with Melania, in theaters now and on Prime Video later this year. And there are reports from Variety and Deadline that Ratner will be helming a Rush Hour 4 that's in the works. So is this the start of Ratner's comeback? I don't think so, says Jeff Bach, senior media analyst for Exhibitor Relations. I think it's the only job he could get. Purchased by Jeff Bezos' Amazon MGM Studios for $40 million, Melania follows the 20 days leading up to President Trump's 2025 inauguration through the perspective of his wife, as Melania Trump takes meetings and makes plans for her family's return to the White House. The First Lady, 55, launched her production company, Muse Films, before the film's release. Documentary is unprecedented. A lot of questions surround the movie, and not just the timing of it. The First Lady went ahead with hosting an already announced private White House screening of Melania for friends, family, celebrities, and Amazon executive, hours after the shooting deaths of Alex Pretty by federal immigration agents in Minnesota. Forecasts are volatile on this one, as documentaries are a very unique beast in the tracking world, says Box Office Theory founder Sean Robbins, adding that expectations are pointing to a Melania opening weekend of $3 million to $5 million. Even $1 million would be a huge number, Box says. That would mean that a lot of folks who don't normally go to the movies went to this. USA Today has reached out to Ratner's representatives for comment about Melania. It's a political documentary, but it's not an important enough political figure that would actually necessitate people to buy a ticket for, Box says. She hasn't done anything that controversial or that interesting, to be blunt, to encourage people that might lean one way or another to say, hey, I'd like to know more about her. For centuries, presidents and first families have used the media to put out a good image to the public. Eleanor Roosevelt wrote a daily newspaper column, Jackie Kennedy hosted a televised White House tour, and other recent First Ladies wrote memoirs, says Catherine Jellison, a professor at Ohio State University who specializes in First Lady studies in gender and politics. But this particular arrangement is pretty unprecedented, adds Joel Penny, an associate professor at Montclair State University with a focus on cultural studies and political communication. The idea of having a studio backing this and releasing it in theaters has certainly never been attempted in U.S. presidential history. Ratner was a powerhouse before sexual harassment allegations. Then there's Ratner's involvement. Once one of the top names in Hollywood, Ratner, 56, made $40.9 million with his 1997 debut, the Chris Tucker, Charlie Sheen comedy Money Talks. But his career took off with the popular Rush Hour trilogy starring Tucker and Jackie Chan. In 2017, 6 women accused the filmmaker of sexual misconduct amid the hashtag #MeToo movement. Munn described how Ratner masturbated in front of the then aspiring actress on the set of his 2004 movie After the Sunset. Henstridge alleged that Ratner forced her to perform oral sex when she was a teenage model, and 4 people involved in the production of Ratner's Rush Hour 2 in 2001 recalled how the director chased young women and established a predatory atmosphere on set. No criminal charges were filed against him, and Ratner denied the allegations in a statement through his lawyer. Brett Ratner vehemently denies the outrageous derogatory allegations that have been reported about him, and we're confident that his name will be cleared once the current media frenzy dies down and people can objectively evaluate the nature of these claims. He understands the seriousness of this issue and the importance of addressing the concerns of victims of sexual misconduct, both in the entertainment industry and beyond. Still, his Rat Pack Entertainment production company ultimately parted ways with Warner Brothers Pictures. In December, Ratner popped up in a photo from a batch of Jeffrey Epstein files released by the Justice Department, which also included images of prominent names such as Tucker, President Donald Trump, former President Bill Clinton, Mick Jagger, Michael Jackson, and Diana Ross. Ratner is shown in an undated photo with a shirtless Jean-Luc Brunel, a French modeling agent and longtime Epstein associate. In 2022, Brunel died by suicide in his jail cell while facing charges in France of raping a minor and supplying minors to the disgraced financier. Mark Beckman, senior advisor to Melania Trump and a producer on the documentary, told USA Today in an email interview that the First Lady considered several filmmakers and had some discussions with people that had various capabilities as far as executing and implementing our creative vision. Ratner has produced several documentaries, including Night Will Fall and Before the Flood, but he's never directed a full-length documentary. He was chosen for having a proven track record of creating some really compelling imagery on the silver screen, Beckman said. We believe that he was capable of creating a film that had that very rich cinematic experience that we were looking for, that the First Lady was looking for, and furthermore, that he could assemble a best-in-class team to realize that very rich cinematic expression, which he did. Is Melania a Ratner comeback or just a paycheck? Ratner's participation likely won't sway the average moviegoer to see Melania or not. I'd imagine that not a lot of people are paying attention to the director of a documentary in the first place, Penny says, noting how comedians such as Louis C.K. and Russell Brand have been embraced by the right for their anti-woke stances, after they were exiled from Hollywood amid sexual misconduct allegations. The idea of conservative media rehabilitating figures that have been canceled is something we've seen, Penny says. The involvement of Ratner speaks to the way this film is speaking to a certain type of audience. I don't think a lot of conservative Trump supporters are too concerned with the hashtag #MeToo movement. But it's uncertain if the project will chart a new Hollywood rise for Ratner. For the filmmaker, Melania is a paycheck, Bach says. Let's be honest, Hollywood wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole right now, and hasn't for a decade, and that means something. No studio has hired this guy for over a decade, a guy who made millions upon billions of dollars at the box office with his films, Bach adds. Hollywood is very keen to give second chances to directors who have made a lot of money, and the fact that they won't with him means that he did some things that were very bad, or at least everybody in Hollywood believes it. Hollywood will take notice if Melania becomes a box office success, though Rock thinks that, if anything, it would show there's a red state market for films like this rather than a clamoring for more Ratner. Bach thinks Rush Hour 4 eventually will happen. Ratner may be an executive producer, but I'd be shocked, honestly, if he came back as a director, Bach says. That would be big for him, and nostalgia and ideas are where it's at right now. Melania has been kept away from anyone other than invited guests. Most journalists won't be able to see the film before it opens this weekend, likely as a way of controlling the narrative. This movie is very obviously going to be raked over the coals by most film critics who are not Trump fans, Penny says. It's going to be absolutely eviscerated. That said, it'll probably get a lot of glowing coverage in conservative media. Movies. What a piece of work is Hamnet, but is it true? From Patrick Ryan. No, Chloe Zhang did not misspell the name Hamlet. In the opening title card of her Oscar-nominated movie Hamnet, in theaters now, the director dutifully explains that both names were interchangeable because of a lack of standardized spelling in the Elizabethan era. It's one of the many things you might learn from Hamnet, which dramatizes the marriage between playwright William Shakespeare, played by Paul Mescal, and his wife Agnes, Jessie Buckley, and how they cope with the loss of their young son, Jacoby Jupe. The tearjerker is up for 8 Oscars, including Best Picture, and is based on the 2020 novel by Maggie O'Farrell, who also co-wrote the screenplay. Here's what's real and not. Are Agnes Shakespeare and Anne Hathaway the same? Yes, as depicted in the book and movie, Agnes was Shakespeare's wife, although she has been more commonly referred to throughout history as Anne Hathaway. Richard Hathaway, a wealthy farmer, is known to have had 7 children, and none of them was named Anne, historian Lena Cohen Orland told History.com. He did, however, refer to a daughter named Agnes in his will, which was frequently interchangeable with Anne back then. O'Farrell chose to use the name Agnes in her novel because if anyone would know her name, it would be her father, the author told the BBC. It just felt really emblematic to me that on top of everything else, we haven't even got her name right. Did Will and Agnes have an unhappy marriage? Very little is known about Hathaway, although a number of Shakespeare scholars have perpetuated a rather harsh narrative around her based largely on speculation. Because she was 26 when she married an 18-year-old Shakespeare, biographers have claimed they had a shotgun wedding because she was pregnant. Other historians have pushed the idea that she was illiterate and nagging, and that the reason Shakespeare worked in London was to escape their loveless, disastrous relationship. But new research published last year by Matthew Stegall suggests that the bard was hardly an absent husband, and according to an old letter, Hathaway may have lived with him in London as he was writing Hamlet and Othello. How did Hamnet die? Shakespeare and Hathaway had 3 kids, daughter Susanna, born in 1583, and twins Hamnet and Judith, born 2 years later. Susanna and Judith both lived well into old age for the time, although as seen in the film, Hamnet died at age 11. According to the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust, the cause of death was not routinely recorded in the parish records. So Hamnet's death is unknown, and it is not clear whether his father was able to attend his funeral. The most common theory, as in the movie, is that young Hamnet died of the bubonic plague, but it's also possible that his death was an accident. The 2018 movie All Is True co-stars Kenneth Branagh and Judi Dench as Shakespeare and his wife, and imagines that Hamnet drowned in a pond. When did Hamlet premiere? Both the book and movie Hamnet end with Agnes coming to the Globe to see a production of Hamlet. Biographers have concluded that Hamlet was first performed in 1600 or 1601, roughly 4 to 5 years after Hamlet died in 1596. Although there is no definitive evidence that Shakespeare wrote the play to memorialize his son, it's not a stretch to imagine that the story's theme of grief and memory weighed heavily on Shakespeare in the years following his son's death. The play initially was performed by Shakespeare's company, Lord Chamberlain's Men, and Richard Burbage was the first person to play Hamlet. Books. Winslow comes out of retirement with the final score and passions intact. From Claire Mulroy. It had been a while since Dawn Winslow picked up the pen. The prolific crime writer, known for the Cartel trilogy, The Power of the Dog, announced in 2022 that he was retiring from writing to turn to political advocacy. Winslow told USA Today in 2024 that he was content to let it go and focus on the activism. In the run-up to the 2024 election, he made biting videos targeting Donald Trump and his allies. He became a political pundit on to an ex-following of nearly 1 million. All the while, he didn't write. His activism didn't have a particularly positive result, he says. And in the days since, he has turned back to writing as a comfort. Old habits die hard. Characters were bubbling beneath his subconscious, begging to be put to paper. Stories about surfers, career robbers, and a teenager with an illicit side gig became the final score. Out now from William Morrow. Winslow's latest 6-story crime collection. He has maintained his online activism, even at a cost. He canceled his public book tour events for the final score because of serious and credible threats to his life. His reps confirmed to USA Today. We have dealt with threats before, but never like this. I was threatened if I released another anti-Trump video he posted recently. I will be releasing our biggest video this week. In a call with USA Today before his book release, Winslow maintained his ambition for both activism and writing amid a climate he calls madness. My basic philosophy about this is this administration's movement has taken a lot from us. What I refuse to let them take is my passion for living and doing what I want to do, Winslow says. Winslow returns to writing with glowing praise from Stephen King. Winslow is chatting from the beach near his Southern California home, watching the surfers take to the waves. From here, he can see 60 miles of coastline. It's a setting and culture he often includes in his work. He splits his year between here and Rhode Island, road tripping with his wife back and forth each time. His tiny New England home state often appears in his fiction. Toward the beginning of our call, a passerby stops to tell him she's a fan of his books. "Aren't you nice? Did you like 'em?" he says to her. The reader's praise muffled sound over Winslow's gratitude. "Thank you very much." The fan is in good company. The final score features a glowing blurb from Stephen King, who calls the collection the best crime fiction I've read in 20 years. I was gobsmacked, Winslow says. That was so generous and surprising. And listen, he's a great guy. He's one of nature's noblemen. So for a lot of reasons, I was really pleased. It's as good an affirmation as any to keep writing. But Winslow maintains that he doesn't know where the road will wind for him next. Right now, while he says the country is a horror show, he's content to stay the course. Some of these conservatives infamously say, well, we're going to make liberals cry. Well, I haven't cried, and I'm not going to, Winslow says. They're not going to take from me my passion for doing the things that I love to do, and one of those is writing. Winslow's books span the crime circuit, from drug empires to gangs to arson to hitmen. His own interests and expertise are riddled across the page, including his surfing and the decades he spent as an investigator. As any Winslow reader will tell you, the man is a meticulous researcher. For Winslow, location is as important as character. In fact, it often is looming as large as a character itself. From revisiting his childhood suburban New England neighborhood to today's California backroads, there's no setting in this book that's not intimately familiar to me, Winslow says. Thematically, the stories drastically shift. The eponymous short story, The Final Score, follows a robber embarking on one last heist before he's sent to live the rest of his days in prison. Flip the page to the Sunday list, and you're in the slow-grinding seasonal economy of small-town Rhode Island, following a 17-year-old on his alcohol delivery routes to thirsty customers. In Collision, a white-collar hospitality manager must sacrifice his morals to get through a prison stint. One rash decision changes the course of his life. But if there's a through line, it's this. We are often faced with impossible decisions, Winslow says. I think we're in an era, nationally, culturally, where we're trying to decide who we are and what our proper place in the world is in the face of very, very difficult opposition. What's next for Winslow? His first public year out of retirement is shaping up to be a big one. Collision, the final short story in his collection, already has been slated for adaptation starring Jake Gyllenhaal. And an adaptation of Winslow's novella Crime 101 hits theaters February 13th and stars Chris Hemsworth, Halle Berry, Barry Keoghan, and Mark Ruffalo. It's really good, which is high praise from the novelist, Winslow says. They did a wonderful job on both the script and the film. He's reading Nigerian author and MacArthur Fellow Chimaned Ngozi Adichie. He studied African history in college and loves African literature. He's taking up some projects just for fun. One, he tells me, is cataloging the female models in French Impressionist paintings. Why? One day he was looking at a painting and realized this woman has a life that is beyond that two-dimensional thing, he says. He has a lot of ideas he wants to turn into non-fiction books, but he's not sure it'll ever do anything with this one. For what it's worth, I tell him, I think it would make an interesting read. What happens now? I'm not trying to be coy. I really don't know. I haven't decided, Winslow says. I think I'll always write. Whether I'll publish or not, it's an open question. You've been listening to a reading of today's issue of the USA Today on the Naga Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 40 minutes after the hour. Now it's time for the sports section, which is section C. NASCAR USA Luge team up ahead of Milano, from Marcus Smith. NASCAR and USA Luge announced a long-term partnership ahead of the Milano Cortina Winter Olympics. The premier stock car racing series and the organization in charge of luge in the U.S. have revealed a technical and marketing partnership where NASCAR will provide financial and technical resources to USA Luge. With their agreement, expect to see NASCAR-branded content on NBC Sports YouTube weekly shows, spots in the USA Luge Fantasy Camp, athlete appearance with NASCAR branding on athletic wear, and the USA Luge headquarters in Lake Placid, New York. The technical resources and assistance that NASCAR will provide USA Luge will focus on aerodynamic optimization of sleds and other luge equipment. Additionally, NASCAR will emphasize virtual optimization using computational fluid dynamics and wind tunnel testing. For those unfamiliar with the sport, luge is an Olympic winter sliding sport where athletes ride feet first on a small sled laying on their back, gliding down an iced-out track, only steering with subtle body movements. Sleds can reach speeds faster than 90 miles an hour. NASCAR Vice President of Vehicle Performance, Dr. Eric Jacuzzi, conveyed his support to partner with USA Luge in a news release. He said the partnership is about bringing two U.S. sports together to push boundaries and help drive competitive excellence. At NASCAR, innovation and performance are part of our DNA, and this partnership with USA Luge is a powerful example of how that expertise can extend beyond the racetrack, Jacuzzi said. From aerodynamics and engineering to fan engagement and athlete support, we're proud to collaborate with an organization that shares our passion for speed, precision, and representing the USA on the world stage. Members of the NASCAR team scanned USA Luge athletes and the starting point in the program during the Park City World Cup in December 2025. USA Luge CEO Scott Reiwold expressed his excitement. "We couldn't be happier about the opportunity to partner with NASCAR. We align in so many areas: speed, adrenaline, high-tech equipment representing the USA, that it only makes sense to come together in a relationship like this," Reiwold said in a news release. He added, "NASCAR has so much experience and expertise around aerodynamics, fabrication, and materials that we believe, when combined with the knowledge of our staff, will help USA Luge develop the fastest sleds in the world. On top of that, I can't think of two other entities, NASCAR and Olympic Sport, that shout USA. We have already seen benefits in the short time we've worked together, and we are excited about what the future holds for USA Luge and NASCAR." The opening ceremony for the Milano Cortina Games is February 6th. The luge event kicks off with men's singles training runs on February 4th, with the first competition February 7th. Seahawks Cup lauds scriptwriters, from Nate Davis. "One man's treasure is another man's treasure." It's about as apt a way as possible to sum up the past year for Cooper Kupp. It was readily apparent January 25th, following the NFC Championship game win, that Kupp's Seattle Seahawks teammates were thrilled for him. It was readily apparent following Sunday's NFC Championship game loss that Kupp's former Los Angeles Rams teammates were nearly as thrilled for him. As for the man himself, it was fairly clear Monday that Kupp still wasn't quite able to fully revel in the thrill of another Super Bowl trip with his new team, given that it came at the expense of his previous one. It's hard because those guys, a lot of those guys that were across the field last night, are my best friends. You know, lifelong friends of mine, Kupp, after collecting his thoughts, replied when asked by USA Today Sports at the Seahawks suburban training facility. "It's just a weird conflict, a weird thing to work through." Give him credit for working through it effectively. Kupp's 13-yard touchdown catch from Sam Darnold late in the third quarter provided Seattle's final points, and what turned out to be the decisive margin in a 31-27 victory, the Seahawks, second in the Pacific Northwest over their NFC West rivals in the last 5 weeks. "I'm most happy for Coop," said linebacker Ernest Jones IV, another Rams cast-off who helped recruit Kupp to Seattle following his release last year. After the game Sunday, Kupp didn't speak to reporters in the locker room post-game. "I've been in that position. I've been there. I've left that place. I know everything he went through. I know this feels good for him, and I'm happy we were able to do it," said Seahawks coach Mike Macdonald. Some whispers before the game like, "How cool would it be if Coop scored a touchdown today?" And he did. "I mean, we love him. He's the best." The Rams clearly don't disagree. Kupp finished his 2021 season for LA with Super Bowl 56 honors, the capstone of a campaign during which he had 178 catches for 2,425 yards, NFL records when combining in a single season plus postseason. But his production diminished in subsequent years, partly because Kupp was frequently injured, but also because Puka Nacua instantly emerged as a number one caliber receiver as a rookie in 2023. Kupp's sacking numbers, which didn't align with his salary, led the Rams to the agonizing decision to cut him, after reportedly pushing retirement. Kupp, a native of Washington State, signed a 3-year, $45 million deal with Seattle. He caught 47 balls for 593 yards in a secondary role to Jackson Smith-Njigba. And though Kupp was effectively replaced by free agent acquisition Davante Adams, a gone but not forgotten vibe emanates from his ex-mates. My mentor, a friend to me, and I know I wanted to see him and be able to congratulate him on the game he had, and then also congratulate him on the opportunity to go out there and play for another Super Bowl, said Nacua. I love that dude. I'm super proud of him, and I can't wait to watch him. Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford hovered long enough in the aftermath of what was a gutting defeat for him to wish Kupp luck in Super Bowl 60 against the New England Patriots. Obviously, just so much love for him as a friend, Kupp said of Stafford, with whom he'd spent countless hours watching film for the Rams as their personal bond grew. And so for him in that moment, to be able to, just linger on the field and come find me means a lot. Yeah, that was a pretty cool moment. Kupp, whose crucial, if questionable, third down catch in Sunday's fourth quarter also proved deadly to the Rams, extending a drive that allowed Seattle to drain most of the final 5 minutes from the clock, now heads to his third Super Bowl. He was injured and didn't play in the Rams' Super Bowl 53 loss to the Patriots. Yet, Kupp also isn't living in the past. Asked where her Super Bowl MVP trophy is, he replied, I believe it's down in L.A., so who knows? Now it's full speed ahead with preparations begin to take on New England on February 8th in Santa Clara, California. And though the Patriots are the final stepping stone to what would be a second Lombardi for Kupp and the Seahawks franchise, he couldn't help but marvel at the path he and his new squad have taken. For this story to be what it was, had to be through the Rams to be able to get through where we wanted to go. NFC Championship in that moment, he said. Yeah, script writers did a good job with that one, tell you that. Commentary. These Patriots feel a lot like the yesteryear champs, from Bill Cook. Nobody believed in us. Chips on shoulders, disrespect, real or manufactured. Opponents who allegedly have been glorified, favored, or preferred in some way by comparison. Sound familiar? It should. This was always a spiky offshoot of the Patriot way when Mike Vrabel was a player, and so it is again in his first year back in New England. The Patriots have managed to bottle what should be a recognizable formula for everyone in the region and are turning it loose again on the rest of the NFL. The latest example came at Empower Field in Denver, with the Broncos surrendering their chance to reach Super Bowl 60 in a snowstorm. New England endured its way to a 10-7 win in the AFC Championship game, an occasion that sealed Vrabel's place in franchise lore as a triple threat. Disruptive linebacker and occasional red zone passing target now have some company. Rejuvenating head coach joins them on the mantle. He's one victory away from putting his hands on the Lombardi Trophy for the fourth time. And the Seahawks stand in the way in a February 8th kickoff at Levi Stadium in Santa Clara, California. I've been there, Vrabel said, and it's amazing. I want other people to feel that feeling. Vrabel, Rodney Harrison, and Teddy Bruschi were among the vocal standard bearers for that first iteration of the Patriots dynasty. Tom Brady was still in his ascent to full superstardom, and his defense did some serious heavy lifting in Super Bowl victories against the St. Louis Rams and Philadelphia Eagles. A team that won a combined 57-16 and captured 3 championships in a 4-year period still managed to drive itself from within through bulletin board material occasionally created from thin air. He helped us build this identity that he speaks of, Patriots receiver Stefon Diggs said. He held everybody to the same standard. That's something I'm super thankful for. New England was 0-4 in previous playoff trips to Mile High. Put that in the motivation column. Denver was unfortunate enough to have offensive lineman Garrett Bowles and Quinn Meinerz named to the All-Pro team. The Patriots' defensive line group immediately heard mismatch. That's the Broncos we were given even a sliver of chance with backup quarterback Jarrett Stidham replacing injured Bo Nix' ankle. You can imagine how that was received. I heard that all week, defensive tackle Milton Williams said. I don't care about numbers and all that. Whatever. We've got to go out there and we've got to play. Denver's decisions in the first half only added some fuel. The Broncos held a 7-0 lead when they elected to decline a short field goal attempt early in the second quarter and go on 4th and 1 inside New England's 15. Stidham ran for his life while Williams and Corey Durden rushed free up the middle. Craig Woodson jumped a short route on the right side and a pass fell incomplete to turn it over on downs with 9 minutes 22 seconds left. I don't know what they were doing, defensive lineman Christian Barmore said. I know the mission was to stop them. Stidham came up under pressure again to help set up the lone Patriots touchdown, with Christian Ellis getting loose in the backfield and forcing a fumble toward the sideline. An early whistle wiped out a touchdown return by Elijah Ponder, but that only delayed a designed Drake May run from 6 yards out that made it 7-7 late in the second quarter. New England never trailed, after forcing one of its 8 turnovers through three playoff games to date. You get everybody to believe in something and buy in, Vrabel said. Again, that doesn't come without adversity. You have to have adversity. Andy Burlegalis snapped the tie on a 23-yard field goal with 5:29 left in the third, and the Patriots were in the midst of holding the Broncos scoreless on their last 10 possessions. Denver joined the Chargers and Texans in a 3-game run of futility. New England has allowed just 26 points and an average of 209.7 total yards per game. The fearsome Ravens, with Ray Lewis, Peter Boulware, and Rod Woodson, were the last playoff defense to be similarly stingy in 2000. It's been 2 weeks in a row. They talked about the Texans' defense, and this week it was all about the Broncos' defense, defensive back Christian Gonzalez said. We get that chip on our shoulder. Consciously or not, those previous editions of the Patriots tapped into the personality of their fan base with a constant embrace of cranky. Nice weather today. Wait until tomorrow. It's going to be freezing. And don't look at me like that. And you're driving. Yikes, it's worse than the roads, which are, of course, terrible. This isn't a sunshine and rainbows place. It's never favored the soft. We want Larry Bird's physical sacrifice instead of Magic Johnson's elegance. A bunch of bearded Red Sox instead of the clean-shaven Yankees and Brady conquering the elements instead of Peyton Manning and his Colts luxuriating in their cushy dome stadium. No one expected us to be here, Ellis said. No one gave us the benefit of the doubt. But Vrabes, kudos to him. He came in and made a culture that we believed in. We stuck with it, and here we are. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of the USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 55 minutes after the hour. From Douglas to center stage at Westminster, from Ilana Keller. As a handler, breeder, and owner, David Fitzpatrick has a storied history in the dog show world, with major awards and honors spanning the globe. This coming week, he will be in the spotlight judging Best in Show at the milestone 150th Annual Westminster Kennel Club Dog Show at Madison Square Garden in New York. It's just unbelievable. I'm still pinching myself. It's kind of a full circle moment. I've shown dogs that have won there. I've bred dogs that have won there. I've had the winners, bred the winners, and this year I get to award the winner, he said. Not bad for a kid who wasn't allowed to have a dog. I came from a family that didn't allow dogs, and I was obsessed with having dogs, Fitzpatrick said. When I was a kid, all I ever did was go to the library and read all of the dog books, looking up different breeds in the encyclopedias. When he discovered dog shows, he found the magazine Popular Dogs and realized someone in the next town was raising and showing Pekingese dogs. He wrote them a letter to ask if they needed any help, and before he knew it, he was caring for the dogs and attending dog shows. Above all, though, he found that his connection with the pups was more than expected. What I really liked about the dogs, really back then, was their companionship. When you're a teenager, a dog really can be your best friend and your confidant. For me, those first dogs helped me get through my teenage years. Besides, being dogs that I eventually showed, they were just great company. Storied career. Fitzpatrick's career blossomed from that point, becoming a Pekingese breeder himself and owning and handling champions. According to Westminster Kennel Club, Pekingese bred by, or owned by David have had the honor of winning Best in Show at Westminster in 2012 and 2021, as well as reserved BIS in 2023. On 9 occasions, they have won the toy group there. In 2010, 15, and 21, David's dogs were awarded Best in Show at the historic Morris and Essex Kennel Club shows. They have also won Best in Show at the AKC National and twice Best in Show bred by at the AKC National. On 18 occasions, his dogs were Best in Show at the Progressive Dog Club for toy breeds only. Several have been top dog all breeds and many times top toy dog. Over 100 champions have been bred under the PQuest prefix. 19 have been Best in Show winners. Fitzpatrick himself has been awarded the Dogs in Review Winky Award for Best Handler in 2006, AKC Toy Group Breeder of the Year in 2009, AKC Breeder of the Year in 2021, and awards for Mentor of the Year and Good Sportsmanship. As he got older and retired from handling, Fitzpatrick said it's a natural evolution to venture into judging. What I really like about judging is that you get to continue your education and increase your knowledge about all these different breeds. You know why there's standard calls for them to look a certain way, why these terriers had to have a certain construction so they could dig a hole and root out foxes and badgers. It's a challenge he loves. I never really thought I knew everything, but you don't realize how much more you always have to learn about dogs and the sport. Being a judge really brings that to the forefront, he says. Judging Westminster. Being part of the 150th Westminster Kennel Club Dog Show is an honor, he says, as is the club reaching that milestone. It's just amazing that any organization can survive 150 years and go through world wars and changes in culture and government. The whole 9 yards, he said. It's hard to describe how special Westminster is to those of us that have spent most of our life enjoying the show, he said. There's nothing like it. There's only one. What's it like judging Best in Show? Fitzpatrick will choose a champion from among the winners of 7 groups: sporting, hound, working, terrier, toy, non-sporting, and herding. When you're doing Best in Show, you have 7 dogs that very well qualified judges are picking from 2,500 champions that are the cream of the crop from all over the world. So you're bound to get great dogs, he says. If you have 7 wonderful specimens and everybody's showing well and performing well, and they all conform to a standard, you can hardly go wrong. What he may look for at that point, then, is a little extra spark. On the day, there might be 1 or 2 dogs that really rise to the occasion and show extra well and just have some charisma and star quality. They might set themselves apart from the others. Beloved dogs. Fitzpatrick says that while people see the dogs in the ring at the top of their game, behind the scenes they are beloved family members. I wish the general public would realize that they see these dogs and they're putting on their best performances. For the most part, everybody's well behaved, and this is perfectly choreographed dog show and performance. But these are really just regular dogs that the person is showing them, or the owners have this loving bond with. And dogs being dogs, sometimes showing them doesn't go exactly as planned. There's embarrassing moments, like when you're showing a dog and they vomit on the judge's shoe, things like that. Or a dog gets off the lead and tries to run out of the ring, and people can't catch them. Those kind of things kind of happen fairly often. You become kind of immune to embarrassment when you're showing dogs, because even though they're perfectly trained and everything, they're little beings that some days they're not going to want to do what you want them to do, he said. The handlers aren't spared some embarrassing moments either. People split their pants, different things like that, just usual life things, he said. No matter what happens, though, these beloved champions and their humans have an unbreakable bond. At the end of the day, they're just your little friends and companions, he said. There's nothing we wouldn't do for them. Penge moves to States post-PGA card win, from Cameron Jordan. To say Marco Penge's month of January has been a whirlwind may be putting it lightly. The world's 30th ranked player moved from England to West Palm Beach, Florida, preparing for his first season as a full-time member on the PGA Tour. Penge won 3 times on the DP World Tour last year, finishing second in the season-long Race to Dubai to lock up his PGA Tour card for 2026. Penge and his wife, Sophie, who is 8 months pregnant with the couple's second child, moved across the Atlantic to start a new chapter of life in the USA. Now Penge, who has been dealing with a sickness for the last couple of weeks and admits he still isn't 100%, is playing 4 weeks in a row to begin his membership tour ahead of the arrival of his second child. The last probably 6 months have been overwhelmed. Probably still now a little overwhelmed. But I'm really excited to have the opportunities that I've got ahead of me, he said Tuesday, January 27th, ahead of the first start at the Farmers Insurance Open. It's just cool to be, trying to achieve big things in the game and try to set an example for young kids coming up. It's great to have the support that I've gained over the last year, and the people that are kind of on the journey with me is really exciting for me. So it's kind of why I'm here. Yet Penge's welcome to America hasn't been without some hiccups. While trying to find a club to play out of in Palm Beach, multiple courses, which he didn't name, turned him down from joining. He's playing out of Old Palm, which he called a perfect fit. It's nice to be at a golf club that wants to have me there, Penge said. If Penge's meteoric rise continues, he won't have issues playing anywhere he wants. He has made 7 PGA Tour starts, all in co-sanctioned events with the DP World Tour or in major championships, with his best finish at the 2025 Genesis Scottish Open, where he finished runner-up to Chris Scotterup. But 2025 was a breakthrough year for this Englishman, who started 2025 ranked 461st in the world. He won first in China, then in Denmark, and again in the Spanish Open, which vaulted him to the 31st in the world. Just in 2024, he missed 18 cuts and was struggling to find any consistency in his game. Now he comes to the PGA Tour as one of the best players in the world that a lot of American fans will likely get to know over the coming months. I feel like it's something I've always believed in my ability, Penge said. Didn't necessarily know whether there was a certain point. I'm just striving to reach my full potential, which I still feel like I've got quite a long way to go. Hopefully, I can prove that to myself, playing well out here and playing well in majors, and hopefully getting a couple of wins. Penge said he's learned on the likes of Rory McIlroy, Tommy Fleetwood, Shane Lowry, and others to get settled into life in America. There have been stories of success from players who have earned their PGA Tour cards via the Race to Dubai, like Mathieu Pavrin, the Frenchman who won the Farmers in 2024. There are also stories of those who have struggled playing on the PGA Tour for only one session before losing status. Penge is hoping he falls into the former category. At the start of last season, obviously, wasn't the start I wanted, and after winning in China, it's kind of become that I could achieve getting my PGA Tour card, he said. And then for the going on to win 3 times and have some other really good finishes, yeah, it gave me a lot of belief. I'm really excited to see how I get on over here. It's obviously a new challenge, and it will be a little harder than what I'm used to back in Europe. But that's part of being a worldwide professional golfer. Penge talked about how excited he is to start his PGA Tour life playing 4 incredible venues on the West Coast, beginning at Torrey Pines and ending at Riviera in 3 weeks. Stuck in between are stops at the WM at TPC Scottsdale and Pebble Beach. He's also looking forward to competing in the Players and the Masters for the first time. Penge's wife is a former professional golfer herself. The duo won the Sunningdale Foursome in 2016, and Sophie won the 2016 Ladies British Open Amateur Stroke Play Championship and the Smythe Salver at Low Amateur in the 2017 Women's British Open. I met her when I was 15. It's nice to have that support of a wife who understands kind of what it takes to be one of the best golfers in the world. So yeah, I couldn't ask for more. But while Sophie is at home with the couple's son Enzo and family dog awaiting their birth of their second child, Penge is on the other side of the U.S., beginning a whirlwind 4 weeks in a San Diego neighborhood at one of the tour's most historic stops. I feel really privileged to be playing a tournament here, Penge said. Yeah, I mean, it's a good test of golf. The fairways are cut pretty tight and the rough's up. So I've lost quite a few golf balls 5 yards off the fairway already this week. So hopefully the ball spotters will give me a hand. You've been listening to a reading of the USA Today for January 30th. We read the USA Today weekdays at noon. For more information, call us at 716-821-5555. Your reader for this hour's been Nancy.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have episode number 22 of Mark Twain by Ron Chernow. At 3 o'clock, we got New York Magazine, and at 4 o'clock, a re-airing of today's Buffalo News. Stay with us. You're listening to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Radio reading serves people who are blind or have a print disability throughout Western New York and Southern Ontario's Niagara Peninsula. From its broadcast studios at 1199 Harlem Road in Cheektowaga, just north of Clinton Street. Almost 40 years and more than 300,000 hours of radio readings to those unable to read printed matter on their own. Our broadcast signal is provided at no charge by WNED. Volunteer radio readers broadcast daily readings of newspapers, magazines, and books. For more information on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, call us at 716-821-5555. Are you facing challenges with vision loss and need help with your smartphone, sending emails, navigating the internet, and staying connected with your family? VIA, Visually Impaired Advancement, is offering free classes for seniors weekly at multiple locations with free assistance for your smartphone, email, and internet skills. There's a new session every week, and it rotates between the South Towns and the North Towns. It's at your local Erie County libraries and at 10 a.m. and 11:30 a.m. For more information, call Elhana Porter at 716-888-4632. Again, that's 716-888-4632. You're listening to your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Our volunteer radio readers broadcast daily readings 24 hours a day of newspapers, magazines, books, and other printed matter. People who are blind or have a print disability throughout Western New York and Southern Ontario's Niagara Peninsula are provided special reading radios. This year, the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service marks almost 40 years on the air. A broadcast signal is provided at no charge by WNED. Radio Reading Service studios are at 1199 Harlem Road in Cheektowaga. The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service website is nfradioreading.org. For more information, call us at 716-821-5555.
The Niagara Frontier Radio